My name is Bruno Bianchi Sarcone. I run Spainguru.es, and this is the Moving to Spain webinar from Vision to Reality, planning your move to Spain. And what are the objectives of today? What will you gain from this webinar? So, hopefully, you will gain a clear step-by-step roadmap to relocate to Spain. You will get guidance on legal, financial, lifestyle planning, and insights to choose the best location for your needs and dreams. You're going to get some key preparation tips and very practical tools, processes, and confidence. Hopefully, you're going to gain confidence to make your move a success. A little bit about Spainguru. Our objective is facilitating the relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014, so more than 10 years in the business. And you can read some pretty good reviews out there on Trustpilot. I think we are at 131 reviews, all of them 5-star reviews, except 2 of them 4, and 76 5-star reviews on Google. And about me, I'm Bruno. I've been here 21 years in Spain since 2004. And I'm originally from Argentina. I live in 7 countries, I speak 5 languages, and I hold 3 nationalities, including Spanish. And my professional experience, 20 plus years in business, in project operations, sales, managing more than 100 people at a certain moment. Pretty stressful time for me and 4 of my employees. Startup founder, entrepreneurs, and I'm married to an American woman with 2 kids from Ohio. And I speak English all the time at home and Spanish outside. And about a Spainguru. Basically, Spainguru is your companion to move to Spain. You can use Spainguru for free. You have a lot of free resources and you have professional paid resources, right? And I recommend you using a combination of both. If you want to go for the professional services, you can find immigration experts, tax advisors. Those are probably the 2 most important things. You can use professional help in order to move to Spain. Financial planners, health insurances for your Spanish visas, medical certificates, sworn translations, apostille services, private ones, fast ones, and auxiliary services for anything related to move to Spain or when you plan to live in Spain, like bank accounts, money transfer services, property rentals, mortgages, and more than 100 personally vetted services. Most of my partners, I have been recommending them for several years, so you are in good hands. As I said, you can use Spainguru for free as well. You can join my weekly newsletter that I send every Monday with the top discussions on social media and the most watched video out there and investigation blog posts and interviews. YouTube channel with more than 850 videos, 1 per day with 6,000 subscribers. Blog posts, nearly 1,800 articles. And as I mentioned, several community groups with an aggregated number of 150,000 members that you can join today absolutely free. And any of these services is absolutely free and very easy to opt out. If you're tired, you're no longer interested, you can always say, I'm leaving this place anytime. Now moving to Spain, I'm going to treat this as a project, okay? And as I said, I'm a professional project manager. I've been dealing with projects as operations manager most of my life and all my professional life. So moving to Spain can be treated as a project, and I highly recommend you doing so in order to keep it stress-free and organized. For this, you're going to eat the elephant in different smaller bits. And those bits will be the milestones, okay? First, you're going to have vision. How do you imagine your life in Spain? The schedule. What are the key milestones you need to accomplish in order to relocate? Destination. What is the best place in Spain that suits your lifestyle and your vision? The budget. Money matters. Building a financial plan for your life in Spain and also for visa purposes. Immigration. Making sure that you move legally to Spain. And that you set up a long-term strategy if you plan to stay here. Housing, deciding what is the right living arrangement. You plan to rent and then buy. You plan to build your own home and villa somewhere in Spain. All those things have implications. Arrival, you need to prepare the next steps and how you're going to arrive to Spain to avoid headaches in the future. The community, once you're in Spain, how are you going to build those social connections and that safety network that will go with you along your journey into this beautiful country and your new life? Finally, the emotional journey, something that not many people talk about. If you're like me and most of us, you're going to go through a roller coaster of emotions that have been reported by most of expats moving to Spain And you need to be prepared for them, because one thing is dreaming and another thing is reality. So let's start with the first stage, which is vision. And here in this image, I have the coast of Alicante versus the bustling city of Madrid. Living in Spain can be very different depending on where you choose, right? And for that, to make sure that you and your partner, maybe if you plan to move with someone else to Spain, you need to make sure that you have thought about what your plans are, what your dreams are, what your ideas are. For this, will have strong implications and is going to be key in how successful your relocation is. Setting a clear vision will guide all your decisions. Where you are in doubt on which path to choose, having had a clear vision, you ask yourself which of those two paths will bring you closer to your vision. And for this, how is the exercise of setting up a clear vision? You will need to visualize your ideal day, okay? Where you are, the location. Are you in a beach? Are you in a town? Are you in a city? Are you inland in Spain? Where are you exactly? What type of activities do you plan to do in your day? In the morning, in the afternoon, in the evenings? The people, with who are you moving? Are you planning to build a family in Spain? Are you bringing family? Are you bringing your spouse? Yes. And how your community is it going to be? Do you like to be fully immersed with Spanish people? Would you like to also have contact with other expats? Yes. And as I said, you will use this vision to shape your planning. Yes. To make sure that your planning is aligned with what you want. How more, how, what other things you can do to clear up your vision? As I said, thinking about your day to day life. What are your needs? If you plan to work, for example, if you want to have a certain life balance, if you want to have social life or leisure activities. And once you have thought about an ideal day during the week, you should think about an ideal weekend. Yes. And once you have built the week, think about that general idea of how you plan to spend your week. Yes. And then you will move and abstract yourself and you're going to see the full year calendar. Yes. There's 52 weeks in the year, but 12 months, and each month is different. You have seasons, you have holidays, let's say. There are moments in the year in which probably you will plan to go back to your home country for visits. Yes. So looking at the calendar too will help you identify also cultural dates. Yes. In order to build also the cultural aspect. Why you plan to move to Spain? Why is it a wonderful country to you? Right. So think about festivals, food, arts, sports. Yes. Events that happen during that year. So this is how you build your vision. Right. As I said, that vision only will start to be complete once you also think where that those activities happen. Yes, but also we mentioned the needs before. You have to consider access to key amenities, okay, and services like healthcare, schools, shopping, transportation. Yes, you're okay being isolated. That will have implications in your life in Spain. All right, but if you don't want that, you have to also plan where you can move to, okay, and maybe leave some dreams aside and think more in a more practical way, right? As I said, now you will align your vision, okay, with all your decisions from now on. For building a vision, as I said, you have to do an exercise. For this, I have built worksheet that you can print out, okay, or adapt to your needs. But basically, the best you can do is when you are thinking of something, when you're having an idea, is to write it down. That's what many people say. They keep notebooks next to them when they go to sleep or when they wake up. This is a little bit of the same. You need to write down just to make sure that what you're thinking actually makes sense. So this exercise will go in steps. First, you will define your non-negotiables. You have to list them, okay? This is will be, for example, the location, type of home, the type of lifestyle. Then step two, working on imagining or describing your perfect day, morning, afternoon, evening. Step three, maybe try to give more context to that. Okay, you can write freely about that plan, about that vision. Yes, more creatively. And step four, you would share this maybe with the partner. Maybe not. If you're planning to move with your spouse, definitely you need to do this exercise with your spouse. If you're moving with your family, try also including your children, yes, into this. Okay, maybe it's going to be a tough time to do it, but depending on how old they are, definitely they should be part of this, so that the visions of this group that is moving together is aligned. Okay, and there are no, let's say, bad and unexpected surprises on the way, right? And then you will refine this vision, reconsider maybe some aspects after having a conversation, a dialogue. Okay, and then you will start going into the plan stage. Yes. Now, a lot of people say, why will I go into the vision if I'm not sure I can move to Spain? Yes, and people don't, depending on how you are as a person. Some people prefer not to allow themselves to dream before making sure they actually can move to Spain. And some people recommend actually starting with immigration and taxes first. Yes, and after they're sure that they can move legally to Spain and that from a financial perspective it makes sense, then build the vision. Okay, so some people, you understand me that this is not set on stone, this roadmap. Sometimes you prefer to move one stage before another or overlap them. Okay, but definitely, in my opinion, at least you should consider all these stages. Okay, if you plan to move to Spain. Okay, one before, one after. You will start to investigate as well. Okay, does that vision make sense? For this, you can use online tools. If you're not in Spain already, of course, Google. But there's tools maybe you didn't hear before about. WeatherSpark is a fantastic tool to compare climate between all the cities in the world. They have a weather station, okay, or several weather stations. And I'm going to show you screenshots later on. But you can compare your home city with potential cities where you plan to move. And that will give you a clear idea on the weather in those cities. Google Maps, using Google Maps and using the satellite view can also help you immensely to understand the different how things look, really, and so that you can picture better. Using street maps, of course, measuring the distances, because distances also matter a lot, especially if you move, for example, from the USA to Spain. There's a huge difference between cities that are mostly built for cars, okay, and long commute times versus cities that are walkable and all packed together without too much planning, let's say. So these things could help you shape your vision a little bit more. Idealista and other property portals, okay, or real estate portals. We don't have Zillow with so much data, so you will have to work a little bit more, I would say, to crunch more information. And Idealista is a fantastic tool, really has a lot of data, although it's not perfect. Numbeo is a community fed or community driven platform that helps you understand the cost of living in Spain and in the different cities, and joining communities. The most important ones, in my opinion, are Facebook groups. You also have Reddit. But as I said, Spainguru has a lot of Facebook groups depending on the theme. For example, immigration in general, or moving to Spain more broad, or Spanish non-lucrative visa, or digital nomad visa. Definitely join those communities. Also, YouTube. There's so much information on YouTube. As I mentioned, Spainguru has a YouTube channel with almost 900 videos. Okay, but of course, I'm not the only one. Out there, you have amazing YouTubers, like, for example, James Bleak with Spain Revealed. You probably have watched some of his videos. He's really amazing. Just to mention one, but of course, you will find many more. And remember, professional help that you can find anywhere, but on Spainguru have personally vetted these professionals that can really help you take decisions, informed decisions, okay, without spending too much time going into forums. But also, they can help you build as a long-term strategy if you plan to move to Spain according to your personal situation. And that has so much impact in your project that you can't believe it. So always remember, you can go to professionals who can really help you build this. And of course, Spainguru.es, where I told you can find all this to help you. Second stage, schedule. By the way, the questions I will be answering all of them after the presentation. Okay. Now, this second stage, you're going to map your journey to Spain. Okay. And for this, you need a schedule, okay, or a roadmap that will help you stay organized, right? So, you will track your tasks and subtasks for each part of that project, okay? It will help you stay on time and avoid the missing details that are many. And the way you build this roadmap is you set a date in which you plan to move to Spain. It can be in 6 months, it can be in 1 year, in 2 years, in 5 years, you name it. And you work backwards towards the date of today, right? And then you would outline the key deadlines for the different parts of the project. Okay, what are the different parts of a project? You start with major milestones and when you think they should be happening along that roadmaps. Could be visa application, arranging housing, if you plan to sell your home, selling your home, if you plan to quit your job or transition job position in your career or move to Spain as a digital nomad. All those milestones you can identify should be on that roadmap. And each of those milestones are sub projects in the main project of moving to Spain. And each one of those sub projects have many different tasks, right? And you can assign time frames, okay, so that you understand where those milestones happen along the way. Okay, you have to factor in seasonality, holidays, tax implications. Just to give you an example, if you plan to sell your home, you could be liable for capital gains tax in Spain if you sell your home in your origin country and then you become the same tax year a Spanish tax resident. Therefore, you need to plan accordingly for all those things. And of course, I'm going to give you tools to build this roadmap so that you have reminders, okay, for each one of those milestones. Now, again, there is an exercise that you can print. You can do this workshop, okay? First of all, select the date in which you move. Second of all, you identify milestones, okay? Step 3, you start putting timings to those milestones, arranging them if you want sequentially. But as I said, many will overlap. But just to have an idea, a visual picture of how that roadmap looks. And then the challenges. What could be the blocks along the road, right? What are the obstacles? What could be the delays or financial issues, etc. Okay, write them down, right? At least the ones that come to your mind before asking or reading anywhere else, right? Then step 5, you need to then investigate about other people who move to Spain from a broad perspective to more into detail. For this, the best thing you can do, in my opinion, is not only go on Google, but join the communities and ask people, right, that are already living in Spain or moving to Spain, or directly reading also people who gently and thankfully write their journeys on how they moved to Spain and identified potential setbacks, right? And then step 6, a final action plan, okay? Now we start moving from dream to planning and we move to execution. The step 6 is the connection to execution. What can you start doing towards executing the plan? As I mentioned before, some people are nice enough to share their journeys on social media. If you join Spainguru's Facebook groups, and also I post many of these on Spainguru's blog post. A lot of people just write about their journey, so it's good that you read those stories, and especially the ones that are from people who moved from your place, at least your country, but there are strong implications also from different cities, at least from the in terms of immigration and tax purposes, and start contributing to the plan that you have with ideas and information that you didn't consider until that moment. Now we are going more into detail about how we build that plan that you started to set up, right? So success stories, and not only success stories, but also things that went wrong. Learning from others' mistakes is also extremely important, okay? Tools you can use, for me, the easiest and the best, you can have it on your phone, is Trello, okay? Trello is a Kanban style project management tool. That means that you have cards, and each of the tasks is a card. For example, um, you know, reading the requirements for the Spanish visa at the consulate. That would be a task, okay? And those cards and tasks, you can arrange them into different columns. Those columns could be the chronology. Could be, for example, not done, work in progress, done. Or it could be immigration or Spanish visa. It could be taxes. It could be home. It could be whatever. You arrange those tasks accordingly, okay, to what it makes sense to you. And this tool permits you to set deadlines and responsibility. If you're moving as a couple or with a family, you can set different responsible for the different tools. So all the workload is shared. You can also use Google Sheets for project management, but I don't recommend it very much because it doesn't have any reminders. But sometimes it's easy to have everything in one place. Um, Especially you can use Google Sheets when you're going to build your budget, your financial plan to move to Spain. Then you have the Facebook groups again. If you haven't joined them yet, join them, right? And of course, you can use Google Calendars to set your alarms and have everything tied up, all the milestones and all the reminders. Then there is destination. You had your vision, you imagine yourself somewhere in a town, in a city, on the coast, inland, but where exactly, right? You need to find your perfect Spanish home, okay? Because depending on where you move, you will have a certain lifestyle that in other places maybe it's not possible, right? Now you will start to refine it more, okay? You will refine your vision, okay, and your plan, and you're going to start building a list of priorities, okay? Some things, everything, it's almost impossible that you're going to be able to accomplish in one single place. Every place has its own characteristics, and you will have to understand what is important to you and what is less important to you, and also understanding what your spouse's priorities are, etc. For this, you will have to learn about the climate and geography of Spain, understanding the differences between the different regions. It's a small country for Americans, but there's huge variations, believe it or not. This, I think Spain has the size of Texas, but it's incredibly diverse. So depending on where you move, you're going to have a different lifestyle. As I mentioned before, if you use WeatherSpark, you can have access to very long historical data on weather and climate, and it has some very cool metrics there, like chance of muggy conditions or chance of clearer skies. And here you can see a comparison between Valencia, NYC, Miami, Los Angeles, and London for different metrics. But these are just a few so that you understand how interesting, and it's absolutely free to use WeatherSpark. Before, of course, doing a scouting trip, if you have the possibility, I will always recommend doing that, right? You will not only look at the climate, you will look at culture, community, okay, in the different destinations. You will choose between the size of the city, the population, and how active your lifestyle will be compared to what that place has to offer versus quiet villages, okay? And also how you're going to integrate to society, right? Because if you don't plan to be isolated, of course, you need to plan accordingly. What is it there where you selected to move that will help you integrate? Before, we also talked about access to services and amenities. This is a more practical view, okay? Understanding what you need in terms of healthcare, transportation, education, if you plan to move with your children or you plan to study, of course, and how important or prioritarian are those decisions to you, okay? So urban areas, of course, typically offer more convenience, but they will also have a higher cost of living compared to rural areas. For this, you will then start a research and investigation of where you could go. For this, you could use, again, forums, official websites, real estate portals as Idealista, Fotocasa, and so on to explore the different regions. There in the map, you can see the cost of the square meters in euros in rental properties, okay, by province, actually. But then you will have to go more granular. You will have to zoom in because, of course, there are different neighborhoods in these different cities. And there's a strong variation even on the neighborhood and even on the street level in Spain, right? And then you will start to follow local news and understand community life and current issues. Something that I recommend you reading the newspapers, at least the headlines, just the main things, following YouTube channels that they aggregate and summarize in a concise way what's going on here in Spain, right? And potentially, if you decide the region, even have a more regional look to the news, right? As I mentioned before, it's highly recommended to do a scouting trip so that you can visit those potential areas and you can experience the daily life, even though it's not going to be perfect, but it will give you a better feel of what's going on there every day and understand what are the different services and amenities, the distances, how things look, and you're gonna be able and have the opportunity to talk to locals and expats who live there, people who are more like you, maybe, who are already experiencing there, and potentially also meet with professionals, local professionals that will help you even go deeper, right? And after you obtain all this information, you will again do a retrospective and review your plan, right? And you will start to pay more attention into more details, like, for example, cost of living, housing access in those specific areas that you scouted. Next one, budget or money matters. So you will need to budget for your move to Spain. For this, of course, you will have to have into account the visa costs, the relocation costs, how you're going to move, and the setup costs. Once you are in Spain, you will have to plan in advance for your cost of life expenses, okay? Considering healthcare, insurances, utilities, housing, schooling, taxes, okay, need to be considered too, and all that, and immigration as well, because you will need to renew your visas. If you're a non-EU national, you will also have to comply with the different financial requirements that you have for the renewal of the visas. In order to build this budget, as I mentioned before, there is the Numbeo tool, this crowdsourced tool that can help you understand the cost of living in Spain. There's a big discussion in expat groups, which is it cheaper to move to Spain than living in the US or in the UK? Because there is the taxes in Spain that are usually higher than in the US, but there is the cost of living in Spain that is usually much less than in the US. When it makes sense from a monetary perspective to not move to Spain, yes, and there's a huge debate about it. But I remember someone summarizing it, because it's impossible to have a one size fits all rule about this. But this person said that they pay more taxes, but they saved overall at the end of the year. They had 24% more money in their pockets at the end of the year, because they made a difference with the cost of living in Spain, mostly because of health insurance costs that is much more affordable in Spain and than in the US, and other things. No, but this is something that I kept on my head, because it tends to be like this for most people. But of course, if you're making $60 million a year and you plan to move to Spain, it's probably going to be a bad decision from a tax perspective, right? Because Spain tends to tax heavily larger incomes and assets compared to the USA. Now, it will have a strong impact on your budget, the lifestyle that you plan to have. If you dine every day, it's different than if you eat at home. If you plan to rent your house or owning your house, it's going to have a huge impact. Okay, renting a house can be maybe 30%, 40% of your budget, right? Depending on where you plan to live. You will have to also factor in if you're going to pay all in full, if you plan to buy your house, or if you're going to go with a mortgage. And for that, you'll need to calculate how heavy it is in your budget. And then you will have to go into your Excel or into your Google Sheets or your pen and paper and prepare line by line your budget, okay, and financial plan for moving to Spain. Also, if you move from other countries, you have to plan accordingly. Different challenges like currency exchange. Lately, for example, a lot of people are very upset and nervous because the dollar lost a lot of power against the euro. It was always like this for many years, but then the dollar and the euro were almost the same for a longer period of time, but now went back. So all those things need to be planned in advance, and other financial risks need also to be considered. Okay. And as I mentioned, also, if you plan to renew your visas in Spain, you need to normally have certain minimum financial requirements that you need to comply with for that renewal. If you want help on how to build budgets, plans for moving to Spain, you can watch this video, okay, where I go through 3 different scenarios to help you understand the different variations and at least where to pay attention to when you build your budget. I think it makes sense to watch this video at least once and then sit down and build your budget and continue by working on it and going more into detail. Now, taxes. It's important that you, as I said, some people say, first, before dreaming, you need to understand if you can move legally to Spain and if financially it makes sense for you to move to Spain. And taxes have a big say on that second part, okay? The most important thing that you need to understand about taxes is that You become a Spanish tax resident in Spain when you spend physically more than 183 days in the country. This is applying for 99% of people. Okay. But there are two other conditions. If you have your main economic center in Spain, your main source of income comes from Spain, or if your family lives in Spain, you could also be considered a tax resident in Spain. Once you become a tax resident in Spain, you're liable to pay taxes on your global income to Spanish tax authorities, and potentially, if liable, on the net value of your assets. This is the wealth tax, and this is the solidarity tax, okay, that could also be triggered, okay? So the different taxes that you have, the ones I can summarize you, but I have a webinar about this that you can join anytime. The income tax that you pay once, okay, if you're not autonomo, okay, if you're autonomo, you have to pay it every quarter. That has a progressive tax rates that range from 19% to 47%, due on June 30th the following year. So in 2025 we will pay 2024. The wealth tax, that is a regional tax that applies to assets over, depending on the region, there's a different threshold. And Madrid and Andalusia, let's say, long story short, they don't have wealth tax. Something to have in mind. Solidarity tax is the same as the wealth tax, more or less. It's a national tax that starts at 3 million with allowances and deductions. Modelo 720 is an informative form in which you disclose the value of your overseas assets, any assets that you hold outside of Spain, for the different categories for more than 50,000 euros of value on December 31st, the previous year. And capital gains tax, as we mentioned, if you sell your home, potentially you could be liable for CGT in Spain if you do it the same year in which you became a Spanish tax resident. And then different taxes, local taxes, original taxes like IBI, which is the local property tax, transfer tax if you plan to buy a home in Spain secondhand, or VAT if you plan to buy a new build in Spain, so much more, so much more. There is a special tax regime, which is called Beckham Law, especially for employees who move to Spain from companies abroad. Otherwise, it's very hard to be eligible. And these people enjoy a 24% flat rate on their income, only sourced in Spain, not the worldwide income. They don't pay wealth tax. They don't have to disclose overseas assets in 720, and many more perks, I would say. But it doesn't make sense to go for this special tax regime if you make less than 55,000 euros per year, because of the extra administrative burden and other allowances that wouldn't apply. So these are just a few things that, of course, these are all ballpark figures, or let's say for illustration purposes only. And I highly recommend you consulting with a tax expert that can at least point you out in the right direction, depending on your specifics, because Spanish tax laws are extremely complex, and your personal situation and where you move in Spain will have a very strong influence on how your tax burden will be. As I mentioned, you can join my free Spanish taxes webinar that I run every 15 days that has very nice reviews, and it's absolutely free to join, and I always send you a recording, even if you can't join it. Now let's go with the next stage, which is immigration. This is your visas. How you plan to move legally to Spain. There are different options. You have non-lucrative visa for those with financial means who plan not to work in Spain for Spanish companies. I have, of course, webinar about the non-lucrative visa that you can join. I think it's a pretty good one, also with very good reviews. But basically, this is also called a retirement visa. It's typically for people who plan not to work in Spain, who are receiving a pension, or have enough savings to move to Spain. You need to have at least 29,000 euros for the main applicant in savings to apply the first time, and 7,200 euros per each dependent for the non-lucrative visa. Digital nomad visa is a new visa, okay, that you can also apply from Spain, not only from the consulates. The non-lucrative visa, you can only apply from consulates outside of Spain. But the digital nomad visa is meant for remote workers who work for non-Spanish companies outside of Spain. And also you have minimum earnings threshold and many other requirements. It is a kind of complex visa in terms of requirements. And people recommend doing it from Spain because it has several advantages compared to doing it from the consulates. You have work visa, directly a work permit, okay, which is harder to obtain from outside Spain, rather than going for another type of residence and then modify to a work visa. And work visa, you can do it for your own business project that needs to be approved, or if you are sponsored by a company who offered you a job offer, okay. Then you have student visa, right? That will grant you a permiso de estancia, which is not a residence. So this being a student in Spain doesn't count towards citizenship by residency, something very important, and it counts as half of the time for the permanent residency. Okay, but it is easy to obtain if you plan to move to Spain for a while. But for long-term strategy, you will necessarily want to modify the student estancia status. The golden visa ended on April 3rd, so we're not going to talk about the golden visa. And some key considerations. Each visa has specific financial and document requirements. The processing times vary a lot, even depending on the consulate, your specific case. And you will have to make sure that that specific project of the visa is very, very detailed, or go also with professionals in order to reduce your stress. This is not all the list of visas. This is probably the most important ones. You have highly skilled visa and other types of visas, but these are probably the most important or more famous ones. Okay. It's very important to understand that the visa can be denied if you don't comply with the requirements or with the right documentation. And it's important to come legally to Spain, because not only you will not have problem with the authorities, but also when you plan to find a house, open a bank accounts, or access healthcare, it's important to be legal in Spain in order not to have friction. Now, once you learned and look at all the visa types, you will have to explore which ones apply to you. As we say, it could be the non-lucrative visa, it could be the digital nomad visa, or other kinds of visas, or for some people, have the possibility to apply for different visas. In that case, I would highly recommend going with a lawyer, immigration lawyer, that you can find recommended ones on Spainguru.es, that will recommend you the right path depending on your objectives on the long term. But also you will have to align those immigration objectives and path with your tax situation. They have to come hand in hand, because sometimes you can have some possibilities on the tax side, but not on the immigration side, etc., etc. So you need to work with those things, immigration and taxes, hand in hand. In order to apply for the visas, you will have to review the official requirements, okay? The consulates, or if you apply for digital nomad visa, the UGE in Spain. Some consulates work with third parties to outsource their visa processing, like BLS offices in all the consulates in the UK and most of them in the US. You will have to gather the key documents like passport, proof of funds, insurance, background checks, certificates. If you plan to move with your spouse, marriage certificates, with your kids, birth certificates. And you need to ensure that many documents will need to be sworn translated, which, sworn translator are translators that are appointed by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Not any translator or ChatGPT or Google Translate works, okay? So they have to be like a legal translation. You can find them on Spainguru, of course, and apostille. Okay, so these are international legalizations for many official documents, and some that are not usually official, like medical certificates in the UK, also need to be apostilled, right, in order to submit for obtaining your Spanish visa. Something very important is that many documents have a validity time, so they have a window of validity. So when they expire, you can no longer use them for your visa application. So you have to track and time very well when you obtain that documentation and when you plan to submit your paperwork, so that all documents are valid at the time of submission, right? For this, you will have to work very organizedly and in a very organized way, because you need to make sure that when you apply, all your documentation is correct, because small mistakes can delay the process or even lead to denial. Unfortunately, Spanish bureaucracy is a bit hard. It's a bit difficult, but if you're organized, you can do it yourself too. Okay, depending on the type of visa, I would say that, for example, non-lucrative visa, 50% do it themselves, 50% use legal help. For digital nomad visa, I would say 90% of people use legal help, because it is a minefield. Yes, so depending on what you plan, it's going to be different, right? How you consider that. As I said, you need to plan for processing times as well, and you will have to track everything, build your specific roadmap for the visa application and obtaining the documentation, right? So as I mentioned, I have this free webinar about the Spanish non-lucrative visa. I held more than 20 already, and I'm iterating the webinar every single time, adding new stuff, updating everything. So I think it's a pretty good webinar out there. I have all the recordings on the YouTube channel, but I highly recommend you joining the webinar, because there's so many changes happening all the time. Now let's go to housing, number 6. As I said, you can rent or buy. Renting offers flexibility and lower upfront costs. And as we say in Spanish, you won't get married to the place where you have to move. So maybe you had some idea about moving to Malaga, but then it wasn't your cup of tea and you want to move instead to Galicia in the north, right? So if you bought a home here in Spain, of course you can sell again, but taxes are big. Unfortunately, it will be a very bad decision having purchased something here and then moving right away, and even a couple of years after. So think accordingly and try to be keep doors open. Okay, so I highly recommend you renting before, and even if you plan to buy, don't come here and buy right away. Rent before, find the right opportunity. Okay, and then once the opportunity is out there, act quickly, but prepare very very slowly. Sounds almost like a Chinese saying, but yes, that's how it has to be, because if you plan to buy property or rent good properties, those properties fly fast. They fly in 24 hours. Okay, good rental properties in good cities fly in less than 24 hours if they ever see the market. So you have to be very prepared. So you don't want to be in a rush when that opportunity comes. Um, For this, you're gonna use different platforms, and you need to understand the variations between the different regions, and even between the different areas in those regions and the different neighborhoods. You have to go granular. As you see here, Barcelona has the highest price per square meter for rentals, and then you have Madrid, Baleares, Malaga, Valencia, Bilbao. But of course, you have cheap neighborhoods. Yes, affordable neighborhoods in those cities with all the characteristics of more affordable neighborhoods would have, of course. So it will have an impact on your lifestyle too, right? But generally, coastal and tourist heavy cities are more expensive. They have high season during the summer with a big impact on vacation rentals. But for example, in Madrid, the low season is during the summer. This is when the Madrileños go on holidays and the city is empty. This is when the students go back to their homes in the different villages or towns in Spain. So Madrid goes empty, let's say. So you need to understand those seasonalities. Need to understand also that prices are rising very fast. There's a lot of demand now, very little construction, okay? And maybe sometimes you will have to consider going inland, maybe not be on the coast, maybe be a little bit further away, right? These are the evolutions of the different prices per square meter rentals. As you can see, it's going up. It's going up everywhere, okay? But for example, Seville, which is inland, not too far away from the beach, an hour away from the beach, is going flatter. Okay, so but Madrid is, it's inland absolutely, but it is, let's say, the industrial and commercial and economic powerhouse of Spain. Lately, even surpassing Barcelona, and also it's going up. So, in order to find the right property, you can use real estate agents and online property portals. Join local forums like Rentals Malaga, Rentals Madrid, or etc. Okay. As I said, good properties fly fast, bad properties stay in the market longer. Okay. And potentially, even before renting for a midterm, let's say, potentially go on a vacation basis. Use Airbnb or Booking.com or Spot a Home to move to those cities and stay maybe a few weeks, okay, or just 1 week before even proceeding to renting. Yes. Key considerations when you rent or buy: legal checks, maybe work with a lawyer, and you have to understand the different type of contracts that there are and obligations and regulations. Potentially, you will need to register yourself at the city hall, obtaining a certificado de empadronamiento, which will be necessary to submit in the 95% of cases when you plan to obtain your residency card after you obtain your Spanish visa. Okay, and when you renew your residence, you will also have to show a certificado de empadronamiento, this city hall registration, where it states where you live. Okay, your address is the best proof of address that the police or immigration office wants from you, right? And of course, you will have to understand the tax implications. As we said, Andalusia and Madrid don't have wealth tax. They do have, but they have different, let's say, mechanisms to not charge it. Okay, so but if you go to Catalonia, the wealth tax starts at only €500,000 of your net value of your assets, right? Or if you buy a property in Madrid, only 6% transfer tax. I think in Catalonia it's about 10% transfer tax. So all those things will have strong implications, right? You have to avoid high seasonality to get the best deals. You will have to be cautious of scams, hidden fees, paying things in advance without seeing them, sending money. Be careful with all that. Join the forums, okay? And analyze the specific opportunities, ensuring the terms of the contracts are transparent. and understanding the laws. And as we said, going with legal help will always help you. Now, something very important, especially for Americans, realtors here are on the seller side or the landlord side, almost always, as far as I understand. They don't have any motivation to work for the tenant or for the buyer, okay? Because this is how the system works here. The chain of commissions, this is how they affect. So the realtor will not be on your side when you move to Spain, unfortunately. This is something that you have to have in mind. There's no MLS systems like in the US, and many other characteristics. The real estate market here is a bit less transparent. There's less data. It's a bit more wild, put it that way. Um, but of course, once you get used to it, you will understand. And it also has certain advantages compared to your country. But this is also something to understand. You will need documentations in order to rent or buy logically, and you will have to have that updated documentation at the time of buying. Okay. And something you need to understand if you plan to rent is like short term, which are tourist rentals, like 3 nights, 1 week. Okay. You will also potentially sign a midterm or seasonal contract, which is for several months, right? And potentially you could sign a long-term residential contract, which is not um, very common right now because the laws are very protective of the tenants, and landlords are a bit resistant to sign long-term rental contracts because the tenant has a lot of rights and they can very easily stop paying. So we have this problem right now, and it's a very real problem that makes it even harder to find a place to live on a long-term basis. So yeah, usually there's a 1 month deposit, normally with unfurnished properties, or 2 months deposit if the property is furnished. Okay. And you will have to pay your monthly rent. Apart from that deposit, that normally you will get it back unless there was something was broken. You will get it back the moment in which you leave, and you will have certain maintenance responsibilities. But always read the contract, always read the cancellation clauses or the renewal terms before signing, okay? Because there's so much variation and so many possibilities under the Spanish law. And sometimes they will ask for a guarantor or a bank guarantee, okay? And especially if you're moving with a non-lucrative visa, people are reporting some issues because landlords are not very used to see that people don't work and or they have only passive income or savings. And as I said, many landlords will ask for bank guarantees or even insurance for a default insurance that cannot be obtained if you don't have a job contract. So people who retire in Spain sometimes face some struggles, but it's not impossible. You need to find the right landlords that are used to work with foreign nationals who don't work but have sufficient means to pay. 7, arrival. Now, when you arrive to Spain, you have to follow certain steps and recommendations. Some of them are requirements, some of them are just recommendations. If you enter Spain from outside Schengen, you know Schengen is a 28 European countries group that is internally borderless. Spain is part of it, France, Portugal are part of it. So if you fly directly from New York to Madrid, you will get a Spanish stamp on your passport. But if you fly from New York to Paris and then you fly from Paris to Madrid, you will only get a French stamp on your passport. Therefore, you will be missing the Spanish authorities' proof that you enter Spain the right date. For that, you will need to get a declaración de entrada in a police station. Okay, or if you drive from the UK to Spain, you also will need a declaración de entrada. And then, if you can, as I said, it's very, very important that you register for an empadronamiento, this city hall registration, and some recommendations. Open a non-resident bank account, get a Spanish SIM card to receive SMS from authorities as well. And then you will be required to obtain your residency card. You will have to go to the police station, get an appointment with it before, which is usually also a bottleneck, put your fingerprints, your picture, and you will get your plastic card with your residency. As I said, I highly recommend opening a non-resident bank account. It can take a long time to obtain your tarjeta de residencia in Spain, and all that time you will have to pay for rent. You will need to receive money from your original bank accounts, potentially, especially if you plan to buy property in Spain, or pay your utilities or pay your gym. Regardless, you will need to have a Spanish bank account, and many banks accommodate and they have non-resident bank accounts. And also many people that deal with different currencies, for example, GBP, like British pounds or US dollars, use Wise. Okay, first to exchange the currency into euros and then send those euros to a Spanish IBAN in order not to run with high fees. You can go to spainguru.es/financial services and see the different solutions that you have recommended by expats that are already living here or planning to live here. But basically, this is probably the most common process in order to bring your dollars into a euro currency into a Spanish bank account. As mentioned before, recommended to buy a Spanish SIM card. There are different ways you can still keep contact with your origin countries. Sometimes you will need also to receive SMS in order to work with your online bank from the US or the UK. There are different solutions for that as well. And this is also something that you need to set up once you move to Spain, because you want to manage seamlessly all your money in your origin country. Number 8, community. Once you move to Spain, I highly recommend you integrating. Yes. Something that I like about Spain is that they're not too pushy about integrating. They're not pushy, but it's something that I recommend you doing just for yourself, okay? Not for anyone else, right? Because you will be, let's say, alone here, all right? You're not going to have extended family. Maybe you will not have many long-term friends, right? So all those connections are extremely important, in my opinion, right? So you will have to invest time into building them. For that, joining expat groups, local clubs, language exchanges, and practice Spanish. Okay, you can first do it online. Doing it online, for example, I offer you a discount for probably the best online course of Spanish on Spainguru.es that will give you a grasp of the Spanish. And then once you're a little bit more advanced, once you can communicate, join conversation groups with the let's say auxiliary objective of also meeting people, right, who are local or who are expats living in Spain as well, right? You can also volunteer. A lot of people say under the non-lucrative visa that you can't volunteer. You can absolutely volunteer. You can do it, and as long as you don't get paid. And of course, attend festivals, events, neighborhood groups, anything you can get hold on, try to participate. Okay, this is extremely important, in my opinion. And as I said, learning Spanish is extremely it's very important part of it. There are areas in Spain where no one speaks Spanish, okay, which is also fine. I also like that. But you live in a bubble, okay? It's a wonderful bubble sometimes, but you live in a bubble, and sometimes it doesn't even feel that you moved to Spain, and you are rather limited because once you travel around Spain or you deal with other people who I don't know, technicians, or you need to buy stuff, you will have at some point contact with Spain. So it's important, in my opinion, to build that knowledge, at least to have a conversation, right? Um, and for this, social media is extremely important. It's always more and more important. Like meetups, events, all those things usually are on social media. So a lot of people don't have maybe Facebook accounts. They don't have those because they're against social media giants, and I understand that why you could be against those. But unfortunately, they are offering very important tools that most of people use now, and that can help you connect better once you arrive. And finally, we have the emotional journey. As I said, you will experience different feelings, and this almost happens as a matter of fact, to everyone who moves to Spain. There are different phases. The first one, honeymoon, in which you are excited, you are living an adventure, but then you will get your reality check. You will face Spanish bureaucracy, cultural barriers, you will have doubts on your decisions that you made, and then hopefully you will arrive to acceptance, which is a more balanced phase in which you will start to feel at your home, at your new home, and you will embrace your new lifestyle and be in peace with all the decisions that you took. For this, I highly recommend you trying to be patient, something that I am not. But try to be patient, especially you're moving to Spain. Life pace actually ranks very, very high as a reason to move to Spain. In different polls that I run among expats, there's a very different pace of life compared to the US or the UK. And allow yourself time to adapt. 6, 12 months is fine, okay? And try to build your community. Tip 2, join local expat groups to ease the transition, all right? And try to focus, okay, in different things. First of all, remember your reasons when you are in doubt on why you moved to Spain. Remember the reasons why you moved on the first place, okay? And keep them in mind during the tough moments. Embrace the culture, try to engage with local traditions, customs, daily life, to try to feel more at home, learn the language, of course, we mentioned that, and I can't underline it less. Build your support networks. It's very important to make friends and integrate with local communities. That will help you to adjust faster and better. For this, you can watch many videos that I made. These are a couple only on the Spainguru YouTube channel. There you have the QR codes. And this is a little bit of a summary. Try to be flexible. The bureaucracy is slow. Learn Spanish. Keep an open mind. Build a support network. And prepare. Prepare. Recently, there was a CNN article about an American lady who moved to Spain and had to go back to the US. And it was pretty clear that she didn't prepare very much. Probably for the next webinar, I will add a specific slide about this one because it is pretty interesting what happened to this lady. And it seems that it could have been prevented by preparing well before moving. Now, let's recap. Those are the 9 stages: vision, schedule, destination, budget, immigration, housing, arrival, community, and emotional journey. Some of them will come before or after, depending on your preferences, on how you are as a person. And of course, they are not sequential, many of them. Some of them will overlap. But mainly, I want you to bring to your attention those different stages before moving to Spain. And as I said about Spainguru, if you weren't here at the beginning, you can find personally vetted professionals who can help you with your visas, with your taxes, even before taking the decision to move to Spain, to set up the correct strategy for the short, medium, and long term in Spain. And then you can find auxiliary services that you will probably need, like Spanish visa compliant health insurances, medical certificates, sworn translations, apostle services, and many, many other things. Now we're going to move to, and of course, you can use Spainguru for free resources like Spanish, like Facebook groups, newsletter, YouTube channel, blog posts, and so much more, and other webinars, as we mentioned. Right now, we're going to move to the Q&A session here. And if you enjoyed the webinar so far, if you think the information that I'm sharing today with you is useful and you learned something, it would make me extremely happy if you left a review on Trustpilot, something that you can do by clicking the button on the top. In the green bar, there's a red button that will direct you directly to Trustpilot, and it only takes 5 seconds of your time to leave a nice review there, and it will make me extremely happy. Now let's go to the questions. Prasan, can you please share all the video links of the YouTube videos you recommended? I will try to do so once I upload the recording of this video, of this webinar. I will upload it to YouTube, and I will try to find the different videos. But also, you can also search on the YouTube search bar. You put Spainguru and you put whatever that video is about, and hopefully, the search engine of YouTube will point you out in the right direction. Would you be sharing the slides? I'm not going to be sharing the slides. I will be sharing the video. Okay, the same thing that you have seen today. You're going to have it, and you will be able to access it anytime. Diana, could you please comment on reports that W-2 US employees have been granted the digital nomad visa? Yes, I've seen people saying that they apply for the W-2, let's say as W-2 employees for the digital nomad visa without any issues. Okay, these are very rare cases. So as you probably know, at the beginning, it was pretty common for W-2. The certificate of coverage for the Social Security of the USA was accepted by Spanish authorities. Then we had a long period in which that Social Security certificate was not accepted by Spanish authorities. So it is recommended to circumvent this situation to become a 1099 contractor and pay taxes and Social Security in Spain. And now, lately, in the last weeks, I would say, I've seen people, first-hand experiences of people who applied as W-2 employees and were accepted. I would say right now, my impression, my opinion on the matter is that it is quite random when this happens. It is not very clear. There are not very clear guidelines, and it's not very it is not something that is set on stone or very transparent. Even those first-hand experiences don't give clear details, even when asked about what was different in their application. So it seems that right now they've been quite lucky, let's say, to be approved as W-2. So it is a risk that potentially someone could assume and take, but it's a very, very big risk that you are not approved or granted the digital nomad visas W2. This is my opinion right now. This is not legal advice. Please go with professionals who are experienced, especially in this visa, which is very particular. Okay. Hope that answers your question. Unfortunately, I don't have anything more to say because, as I said, it's pretty precarious, the situation about the W2 employees. Brasan, any other YouTubers you recommend other than James Blick? Hard to say because I love James. It's amazing what he does at Spain Revealed. I really love it. Just search moving to Spain. You will have tons of them with a lot of followers. It also depends on you what you plan to watch. Spainguru is a little bit niche, I would say. It's more into immigration, tax issues, paperwork, more when you already know that you want to move to Spain. Watching Spainguru, and especially if you plan to move as a retiree using the non-lucrative visa or just in general non-lucrative visa, I think Spainguru is very, very valuable. Digital nomad visa too, and Spanish nationality, ley de memoria democrática, all this. Spainguru is very valuable, but a little bit more niche than other YouTubers who talk more about the cultural aspect of Spain or like the best tapas bars in Madrid. So it will depend on what take you want. Maybe a combination of all is interesting. But yeah, definitely YouTube. When you search moving to Spain, you will get a list of YouTubers out there who share fantastic content. Will you be sharing this vision worksheet with us? It's gonna be in the video, okay? And it is an inspiration so that you understand me, okay? So you can just write it down on a piece of paper, take the screenshot and print it if you want. But it doesn't have to be exactly like that. It has to guide you towards the different processes via workshop. But then you will have to go into detail into all the different milestones of your roadmap. Will you be sharing this with us? Yes, as a video. Let me see. Don, we're from the Philippines. My wife is applying for citizenship by descent. Then I plan to obtain residency until I can apply for citizenship in 2 years. Yes, Filipino nationals can benefit from the 2-year fast track for Spanish citizenship by residence. Any pointers for someone in our unique circumstances? For instance, the requirement to have a place of residence beforehand. Any pointers? I mean, not really right now. Like, if you want to join the Spanish immigration group on Spainguru, there's tons of Filipinos there. I think my most watched, I will actually write the link of my Facebook group. 37,000 members there and a ton of Filipinos. I also have a group specifically for Filipinos, but I think it is even more active, the group that I just shared with you in the chat. And there you can ask for the specifics, really, because I could start and never end about all the specific things, because it's a big project what you're mentioning, right? Obtaining first the ley de memoria democrática by descent from your wife, then obtaining your citizenship. But also, if you're married to a Spanish and you live for 1 year in Spain, you can obtain already the Spanish citizenship by marriage, right? So it's also something to consider that you didn't mention there. In your situation, I would at least consult for an hour with an immigration expert just to make sure you're doing things correctly. If you don't want to spend much money, just 1 hour consultation will be enough, at least just to check mark that you haven't made big mistakes in your process. And you can find, of course, those on Spainguru.es. All right. So, what are the common reasons people make? Sorry, display there. I think I made a mistake here. Published. For some reason, I cannot see the button display. There's a little mistake there. So I will try to read the questions that I haven't answered because it's not working. What are the common reasons people make because of which people are not able to benefit from Beckham law? I'm planning to move to Spain for work, but I'm currently on a career sabbatical. I appreciate your insights. So basically, it's eligibility problems. Okay, you need to check the eligibility conditions for Beckham law. You have to be normally an employee of a foreign company moving to Spain. You shouldn't have been resident in Spain for the previous 5 years. You need to make a certain amount of income so that it makes sense, and so on and so on, right? So, but mainly, many people think that if you move to Spain as a contractor It's happening a lot because of digital nomad visa, because of the certificate of coverage. As a contractor, it is highly unlikely that you are eligible for Beckham's law. This is probably the main thing. And the last one, what are the common reasons people fail to benefit from Beckham's law? I just mentioned. I'm planning to move to Spain. I think it's the same question, but double. So we made it to the end. Thank you so much for joining today. You can always send me an email to hello@spainguru.es and ask any question. I always answer my emails. And I really appreciate that you joined today. I will upload the recording. It takes me some time, a few hours to elaborate a little bit. And also, Prasan asked me to add the links to the video, so that will take me even longer to add. So all those things, hopefully I will have them ready, and you will receive the link to the published video of the recording of this webinar. Thank you so much for joining today. Hope to see you in other webinars as well, and stay in touch. Goodbye. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias for everyone joining today. Bye-bye.